There's a beautiful simplicity in a best friend.
I'm going to Mordor alone.
Of course you are. And I'm coming with you!
I thought of something funnier than 24.
Let me hear it.
25.
Someone who you can trust unconditionally, someone you can expect to care for you, to be loyal to you with only reciprocal loyalty as payment. A person with whom no expectation must be met, a constant in your day-to-day, the anchor of the slowly sinking ship of life. You open your heart to them, yet in that choice of vulnerability there is no fear of being betrayed, or perhaps no acknowledgement of the possibility. It's just that simple. They're my best friend. I could never hurt them, even if I tried. A best friend is a common thing, the first thing you dare call someone when your connection is beyond that of what is expected. Before they're your brother, your lover, your soulmate, they're your best friend. Eventually, however, that simplicity turns into a commodity.
It literally makes or breaks the shirt. Look at it. It's too high. It's in no man's land.
Haven't we had this conversation before?
You think?
I think we have.
Yeah, maybe we have.
Like all stimuli, you grow numb to it. You grow quick to engage in it, to use it. They become an extension of you, as easy to access as your own hand. It's then when you will look down at your palm, see it calloused and bruised, and whisper, "They're my best friend. They'll forgive me." The best friend is almost as quaint a character archetype as they are a human relationship quirk. From family sitcoms to raunchy horrors, it's nearly impossible to ignore the way the vague title of best friend is used as an Occam's razor for character interconnectability. Why is Captain America so adamant on fighting for Bucky Barnes? Because that's his best friend. What other explanation is necessary? It's simple. Do you understand it? It's human nature to understand it so innate that just the implication of that connection having existed between Obi-Wan Kenobi and his mechanized killer enough to propel the latter into villain superstardom. As if the string between you and your most loved confidant is one made of iron, strong and nearly impossible to snap, the severance rippling through the two of you loudly like the shock of a thunderstorm. Though those with a lost childhood friend or a hometown long since abandoned know that if such a string were to exist, it would be far more malleable and stubbornly resilient than metal.
空に願いをかけるそれは叶わぬ想い一人
Gon Freaks and Killua Soldic first meet during the first official stage of the Hunter exam, gravitating towards each other at the realization that they are both the same age and equally as adept at this endurance test.
Hey, how old are you?
12 years old.
Same as me.
Their first interaction is one of inherent competitiveness, Killua not wanting to be seen as lesser than the similarly aged island boy who actually ran as instructed instead of languidly riding a skateboard. A characterizing reaction as we quickly learn that Killua is not particularly tied to the idea of passing this exam.
I've got to tell you, Gon, I'm pretty impressed that you can keep up with me.
You are?
Or maybe they're all so slow you just seem fast. Man, I thought the Hunter exam was gonna be more of a challenge. This is boring.
Hey, why do you want to be a hunter anyway?
Who, me? I never said I wanted to be a hunter. I just heard the exam was supposed to be really hard. It sounded kind of fun, so here I am.
The sudden shift into honest sportsmanship being purely for his own pride. Fitting of an introductory arc, we see the archetypes that these two 12-year-olds, along with their two older friends, begin to fit into. Killua, the overly capable, prickly, cool guy foil to the clumsy, bright, social butterfly that is Gon. A dynamic tested in this first conversation of theirs, where Killua reveals his origin as the heir to a family of assassins to the slightly older boy, a hint of his darkness allowed to clash with the other's sunny disposition.
Your parents, are they... I mean, where are they?
They're alive. Probably.
What do they do?
They're assassins.
They both are?
That's your response? You really are a riot, aren't ya?
Yet Gon fails to really react to it, finding it nothing more than an additional cool tidbit to add to the collection of cool tidbits that the pale preteen had already accrued in his mind, filed right next to knows how to ride a skateboard.
Oh, wow!
And it's this innocuous understanding between the two, agreement that the other is cool, that ties them by the hip for the rest of the test. All throughout, Gon and Killua compete over every tiny thing, childish excitement at having found someone of matching ability clear in their expressions. Though under the surface of the children's shared fun, it's easy to see the slight subversion of their assumed roles. While sarcastic and cold, snotty, pessimistic, and smug in a way only fitting of his very unique upbringing, Killua is decidedly warm to Gon. While not above chastising him, the boy is hardly ever willing to berate Gon in any way that might be read as hurtful, a consideration he does not extend to the rest of the cast. In fact, although one would not be blamed for initially reading the assassin as the type to place himself above others, when given a situation where selfishness is incentivized, Killua makes it a point to state his loyalty to Gon and his success.
So now we have to pick which three advance. If it was up to me, you and I are two of them, Gon.
Conversely, the spiky-haired protagonist is as bright as ever to Killua, though to an almost uncanny extent. This comical lack of pessimism, usual of any shonen protagonist, is pushed to its limit in one of the show's most iconic scenes, where the appropriately deadly Killua rips a serial killer's heart with practiced ease. A display which expectedly disturbs every other witness, yet fails to even stutter Gon.
Who is this kid anyway?
That's right, you guys don't know.
Wait, no what?
Killua's family. He says they're a bunch of elite assassins.
Did you say elite assassins?
Gon stares as his new pal taunts the man whose heart he carelessly dangles with middling curiosity, only surprised at just how impressive this new friend of his really is. It's in this mirrored graying of morality, shared sense of humor, competitiveness, and admiration, where Gon and Killua become Gon and Killua. Or at the very least, that's the part of the other they both reciprocally enjoy. Nearing the end of the exam, Killua meets a slice of home in the morphed yet still absent stare of his eldest brother.
Big brother.
Illumi Soldic, with a manipulative tone of voice fueled by the inky tendrils of his brotherly love, or maybe through his otherworldly powers that we are yet to be introduced to, implores Killua to kill one of the other contestants as a both metaphorical and literal way to send him back home.
You're a puppet of darkness, devoid of passion. There is nothing you desire, nor is there anything you wish for. As one who lives in the shadows, the only pleasure you're capable of is derived from causing death. Because that's how Dad and I raised you. What do you imagine that you would accomplish by becoming a hunter?
It's true. I don't really want to be a hunter. But everyone wants something. Even me.
You don't.
Wrong! There is something that I really want.
Enlighten me. What is it that you want? What's the matter? There really isn't anything, is there?
There is! I want to be friends with Gon. I'm just so sick of killing people. I want to be friends with Gon.
With void eyes and well-established ease, the young assassin performs this act of unwanted violence, abandoning the test and walking away from the at the time unconscious boy who would have, above all else, seen past the contrasting blood red on Killua's skin to the remorseful tinge of his heart. Gon, in return, is not at all pleased when he hears of these happenings. He confronts Illumi with a telling and immediate act of violence, staring down the man with a poorly hidden anger and a much less remorseful attitude than his now estranged friend. He pledges to the older brother that he will recover Killua, a deadly vitriol in his glare, silently adding, "at any cost." Orihime, or Weaving Princess, is the main character of the Chinese folk story, The Cowherd and the Weaver Girl. Specifically, she's the protagonist of the Japanese variation of the story, the original myth having traveled far across Asia. Fitting to her name, Orihime was a world-class weaver, a sculptor of cloth renowned by many though most beloved by her only named family, her father, Tentei. So infatuated with his daughter's talent the man was, that he would keep her isolated in their home, manufacturing this otherworldly silk. Though as expected of any maturing child, Tentei was met with a saddened Orihime, lamenting her loneliness and lack of romance. Concerned, the father allowed his pride and joy to momentarily leave and meet someone, a cowherd named Hikoboshi, or Boy Star as it's directly translated to. The two would connect, marrying quickly in young bliss. But like all relationships, this one would come at a cost, that being Orihime's work, her time no longer plentiful enough to weave. Angered by this, Tentei would separate the couple, shackling Orihime back to her work. The gloom the job brought her before would return, though with a taste of delight that her husband had showered the woman in, she asked her father to see him once more. Moved by his daughter's emboldened speech and pouring dedication, Tentei allowed them to reunite on the 7th day of the 7th month. It's as such that July 7th is now celebrated across Japan with the Tanabata, or the Star Festival, a renowned cheer for this amended Cinderella story. Elsewhere on July 7th, Killua Soldig is born, a prodigy coming from a long line of prodigies, a star assassin who his father and mother would quickly come to see as the coming heir of their business at an almost sickeningly tender age. An age that they still saw appropriate to train and bolster. They tortured him physically, electrocuting and poisoning the boy until he became fully immune to such ailments. They prepared him morally, showing the aristocratic normalcy of death and blood by sending the boy out to missions unbefitting of a growing mind. This nay bothered the young Soldik, not knowing any different meaning not knowing any wrong. Yet there was one piece of conditioning, one deployed by only half of his family, that sunk into him even young. Killua, at age 8, is wandering around the forest his family home is surrounded by when he is spotted by a new servant, a young girl probably only a few years older than Killua himself. She approaches, walking with a silence usual of someone trained much like the little kid she followed, something he notices. And said little kid, with the compulsive need to declare their observations to the world to anyone who'll listen that is usual of kids that age, decides to show this worker the fruits of his training. Through this demonstration, Killua learns that the young girl is similarly as capable as he is, and with a sincere excitement asks her to be his friend. To be his first friend. Because despite all of his expertise, despite all of his working, despite all of his training, he had not yet been able to surpass this hurdle.
I don't have any friends. Will you be my friend, Canary?
Unfortunately, this was by design, and with a slowly shattering heart at seeing her master's smile melt away, the girl refuses.
I'm sorry, Master Killua. I honestly am.
Huh. That's so stupid.
With a faux nonchalance, Killua quickly runs off.
Let's be friends!
This same butler, named Canary, finds herself in a similarly heart-wrenching situation. She had been placed as a guard of the manor and currently stood 3 people determined to get in. A tall man, a blonde man, and an injured boy. It's that last one that is bothering her resolve of service the most. Her cane drips with his blood anytime he approaches the entrance, forcing her to fulfill her duty of violently dispatching him. Yet this boy refused to fight back, refused to give up, and refused to stop repeating the same things.
I'm gonna see Killua!
Gon yells, face bruised and bloodied. And each time, Canary would remember the face Killua just days before had when he reluctantly returned home.
Master Killua.
Yeah. I made one. A friend.
Her master was a talent his family remained adamant on keeping to themselves. A boy whose locked-in childhood left him yearning for companionship. Looking at the spiked-hair boy, surely his same age, Canary sees that he has found someone who will stubbornly keep his friendships as fiercely as Killua will lament them. And yet, Killua now has been shackled to resume his cycle of trials and punishments for even daring to make such a discovery. It's only the fierce discipline of Killua's angered mother that keeps Canary from succumbing to Gon's request. Killua eventually learns of his friend's arrival, doing so while hung up and whipped, calmly taking the punishment that he feels himself either deserving of or too accustomed of to dispute. Hearing the news, however, changes his attitude fully. Previously idly subservient if not prickly, Killua fully rejects the chains that held him when hearing of Gon's return, admitting that the shackles were only as effective as he let them be. Quite literally. With a newfound skip in his step, Killua reaches his father's office of sorts, looking to ask him for permission to leave with his friends. An intimidating yet relatively calming figure, he asks his most gifted offspring to describe this friend to him, to explain who it is that Killua is so adamant to reunite with. With an emboldened tone, the son does just that, his escapades of the outside world finding solace in his more experienced father's heart. Moved by the preteen's pouring fondness, the father allows Killua to meet up once more with Gon, making the boy promise that he shall never betray his friend. Giving the Soldic his first lesson in this new world of companionship he will now venture forth in, solidifying the promise through a pact of blood. Gon and Killua reunite, quickly falling into their juvenile and playful back and forth, both noting the other's worse-for-wear condition. A poignant observation, as they leave the Soldic family home, that we see internalized what this friendship truly entails. Killua has had proven to him the lengths one must go for their friends, the lengths Gon will go to, now bloodied and exhausted. Unflinching, with no plan for success, Gon had followed Killua, a boy he had only known for a few days, to the den of the world's most dangerous assassins, and had suffered for it, all to get a chance to talk to Killua once more. From here on, Killua calls himself a former assassin, striving instead for the title that his best friend now bore, that of Hunter. But more than that, to Killua, he had spoken with the man in charge of keeping him tied to his previous job, a job he had been taught to dedicate himself fully to, a job that was a core of his identity, a job that was his entire life. And that man had allowed his abandoning of that duty to fulfill a much more important one: to be Gon's friend. The two boys separate from their older compatriots, promising to meet them once more in a few months. In the meanwhile, Gon and Killua decide to spend their time training at Heaven's Arena, a well-renowned fighting league that Killua had been tossed in as a child as both practice and a easy way to make money.
When I won on the 190th floor, I had about 200 mil total.
200? Where's that money now?
That was 4 years ago, so it's long gone by now. I spent all of it on snacks.
It's here that the two boys would first learn about and acquire Nen, this world's versatile and far too extensive magic system for me to explain now. What you need to know is that it is a power based on one's own will, where you can make limitations or conditions for the sake of increasing strength as long as your will is strong enough to keep true to said limitations and conditions. Something else you need to know for this discussion is the trio of Guido, Sadaso, and Real Velt, a group of ambitious Heaven's Arena combatants looking to use extortion to get easy wins against our two young protagonists. After an injury caused by a fight with one of these three, Gon is forced to pause his Nen training for 2 months, a break that Killua either in solidarity or in a sense of fairness takes with him, actively hindering his own training for the sake of Gon and staying at his level.
He says he doesn't care what happens as long as he gets to fight Hisoka. But after yesterday's match, I don't know. I get the feeling he just enjoys the thrill.
Oh dear. What have I done? Zushi is waiting in my room. You can train with him if you'd like.
Nah, I'll pass. I don't want to leave Gon behind. If he can keep his promise, we'll train together.
As these 2 months come to a close and Gon is scheduling his next fight, the trio from before approach him. Through a collection of threats and active extortion, they force him into becoming a jobber for the sake of ranking up Sadaso on May 29th, a week before he fully healed. That same day, while the ghostly combatant Gon was meant to fight rests in his quarters, Killua pays him a visit. The boy's upbringing as an assassin means multiple things. His footsteps are always silent, his body immune to all disease and poison, and his ability to appear behind you with a knife just mere inches from sinking into your skull, haunting.
You use Nen and you die. Make a sound and you die. If you understand, close your eyes. Do you see what happens when you break your promises? If you do, open your eyes. Look at me in the mirror and listen carefully. Don't ever show your dirty face in front of us again.
The man complies, withdrawing from his fight as commanded, and even if he hadn't, a ghoulish mercenary was the one waiting for him, not an injured Gon. During this ploy, Killua laments on how hard it is to not just kill those in your way, referring to the trio threatening his friends.
Not killing people is harder than I thought it'd be. Oh man, honest living is tough.
The former assassin would kill for this new friend of his. He had done so for much less, but learning not to assure Gon's safety through bloodless means, was a much harder sacrifice he was just as willing to take. Following their stint at Heaven's Arena, and with quite some time to spare before their promised reunion, Gon adamantly wishes to take Killua to his home village in Whale Island, enunciating the importance of introducing his bestest friend to his dearest aunt and grandma.
And me too! I'm finally home! Welcome back. And you must be Killua.
What?
The visit is humbly domestic, the kids allowed to be simple children in the comfort of the lonely island's picturesque wildlife, a contrast to not only the previous string of intense conflicts they'd endured, but Killua's much gloomier and ragged home life. In a way, Gon brings Killua to a rare normalcy, one the boy struggles to immediately adapt to, but the one that pulls his often sarcastic face into earnestness.
What's going on?
Killua will help Gon accomplish whatever he needs with his unending bag of expertise and talents, no matter what danger that might bring. That is his gift to Gon, one he does not expect to be repaid. Yet it's in the Greenplat friend's nature to return a boon much greater, the warm and soothing monotony of a true confidant, a loved one who he can just enjoy the company of. Something the two would-be hunters indulge in one evening in Whale Island's late nights. Killua had at this point in the story been pulled by circumstance, at most motivated by the many expectations he wishes to avoid. In this solitary night he laments this to his best friend, expressing his admiration and jealousy of Gon's terrifying determination to find his estranged father and to prove himself a good enough hunter to one day meet him.
What do you think I should do?
You should stay here too, then go to York New City with me.
I know. I am coming with you. But that isn't what I meant. I was just thinking I admire you. There's nothing I want to do. You've got your thing. I don't have anything.
In this way, he and Killua are different, the latter having no idea what it is he wants to do with his newfound freedom. After a beat of silence, Gon responds by telling the other boy that he had never really had any friends here in Whale Island, that Killua was his first true friend.
It's fun. Hanging out with you, I mean.
Hey, where did that come from?
Turning to look at his paler other half, he continues, exclaiming about the fun he has when spending time together, before asking if Killua feels the same way. With a defensive and clearly false wall of dismissiveness, the more antisocial friend affirms on both fronts.
I do too, so I think we should stick together. Let's travel around and see the whole world! Just you and me!
You don't know how embarrassing you're being right now, huh?
Above the pair, the night sky, lacking any light pollution, shines Gon's face. The stars peckering the evening like freckles to blushing cheeks, not too dissimilar to the flushed face Killua now bore, impudently and weakly scolding Gon for embarrassing him, unused to the unfiltered sincerity and enthusiasm.
You're right. Doesn't sound half bad.
With a laugh, the conversation shifts to amicable silence, the two boys' plans settling between them. They'll travel together, looking for Gon's dad, at the very least until Killua finds something he'd like to do better. Yet as Gon's mood brightens even further at their commitment's declaration, if that's even possible, Killua wonders if what he has found with Gon is already enough.
That was stupid of me. If I'd made a move, Hisoka would have killed me without a second thought. That murderous aura. I was paralyzed. If they threatened to kill Gon, would I have been able to stop them? Would I have even been able to move?
You can't do it, can you? Because deep down inside, you're more worried about whether you can defeat me than anything else.
You're wrong.
Remember the lesson I drilled into you? Never go up against a superior opponent.
No, you're wrong! Killua? You okay?
Yeah.
Let's see. Mr. Zeppile taught us cauterization, autopsy, and something else. Remember what it was?
I forget.
Was it osmosis, maybe? I don't think it was, but I just don't know.
Gon.
Hmm?
I'll be the decoy. wait for it, and then try to escape. What are you talking about? But that's what gives it meaning.
You can't do it, can you?
Shut up, all right? The only way I'll find out is if I try. Killua, what are you thinking about doing? I'll stop his Shodachi even if it kills me. When I do, you run away.
Huh?
What the hell was that for, huh? Stop being so selfish! Huh? Don't talk about dying like it's no big deal! Why not? You did! You said the same thing earlier! I'm allowed to, but you're not, do you hear me? We only know the basics of Nen. We wouldn't stand a chance. What's so funny? You're back to being your old self again. It's my job to be reckless, and it's your job to stay cool and keep me in line. Glad I can count on you, pal. You're being selfish. Well, what do we do next?
Through a collection of plot threads that I will not divulge here, Gon and Killua end up inside what may very well be anime's very first isekai, a death game made by Gon's father, which they enter in hope of learning more about him, named Greed Island. Finally walking through their first village after months of complications, Killua's attention is stolen by a stern "thank you" from Gon. He turns maniacally, surprise clear in his face, being reciprocated for his friendship, something he never expected or even wanted, sending a shock through him. "I'm glad you're here with me," Gon says. "I'm glad I met you in the first place." The admission only furthers Killua's paralysis, though he forces himself to shyly dismiss the compliment. After all, as we learn from his inner monologue, it's Killua who should be thanking him for their meeting.
I'm sorry, Gon, but you've got it backwards. I'm the one who's glad I got to meet you. I really am.
But that gratitude stays silent, because as much as he might have learned about friendship since leaving his home, the former assassin can't help the embarrassment that verbal affection erupts in him. But even then, he'll be worthy of Gon's gratitude.
Okay, I get it now. Look, it's no big deal.
It is! You're playing this game because of me. You're only here to help me find my dad. You're wrong. I'm playing this game because... One more. I can take it. I've just gotta hold out.
Greed Island had taken quite a turn, the duo placed in a deadly dodgeball match against one of Gon's father's former acquaintances and co-creator of this death game. Racer is nay unstoppable, his speed more than capable of dodging our hero's fastest tosses, and his strength impossible to avoid itself. Though as is often the case, it's cunning that places Gon and Killua at an even playing field. Gon's signature ability, the Jajanken, allowed him to slowly channel his Nen aura into his fist, creating an attack with a force not beaten by even some of the most experienced hunters in the world. Of course, someone needs to hold the dodgeball in place to assure that Gon can appropriately catapult it to the other side of the court, a role Killua took gladly. And while the idea gave them the power necessary to create an undodgeable attack, a punch is much harder to aim than a throw. They were a good few attempts in when a timeout is suddenly called, and now the two kids face their de facto coaches. They'll scrutinize the calm Killua, hands still firmly hidden in his pockets. Eventually the reason why is made clear. Gon's fist forced the ball out of Killua's hands at a burning velocity, and without any protective Nen coating applied, as such a thing would dampen the ball's speed, the pale boy's hands had been torn, bruised, cut, and cracked to the bone. Ragged fingers squeezed at being caught, as even he couldn't deny the truth, that in hopes of helping Gon in his otherwise meaningless goal of meeting his father, he had wordlessly sacrificed his hands. More specifically, he winces in embarrassment at Gon learning, as now Gon would surely tell Killua not to continue with his recklessness. Yet when Gon speaks out, as he responds to the rest of the team suggesting they replace the person holding the ball and let Killua rest, he says the opposite. The black-haired hunter knew that his attacks had all but destroyed his friend's hands before the timeout, but even then, it had to be Killua holding the ball.
I can't do this without Killua,
he asserts. If anyone else holds the ball, he wouldn't be able to use his full strength, he explains. He'd be too worried about breaking someone else's hands. A worry non-existent when Killua's the one holding the ball. This comes as a shock to everyone, though Killua quickly turns the surprise into a smug agreement, claiming Gon is too stubborn to convince otherwise. A good read of the situation, because stubbornness from both parties underlines this unhealthy decision. It'd be a cop-out to switch Killua out, and it's already been planted in Gon's head that he will fulfill this mission of his with his best friend by his side. Different adaptations of this scene, each with their slightly unique wording, bring different interpretation of Gon's words and what it says about the two boys' relationship. If I were to take the reins away from your subjectivity as a viewer and into mine as a narrator, I'd return to my original diatribe of what it means to be a best friend. Later in this same arc, Gon enters his fight with Greed Island's main antagonist with the conscious decision that he would need to sacrifice his hands to beat him, something only really necessary because of his own stubborn refusal to fight him with help. The narrative through-line is clear. The sacrifice of Killua's hands is the same as his own, both emotionally and literally. He can't bear to harm anyone else, so he'll only harm himself. And Killua, having far outgrown the simple label of a friend, is enough a part of him to fall under that umbrella. It can only be Killua, because they do everything together. It can only be Killua, because he trusts him and his hands like they were his own, and will use them as such. It's inconsiderate, no doubt about it, to harm someone you care for so deeply, so casually. But Killua would never complain. Maybe because his assassin training has attuned him to much worse punishment, or maybe because the list of things the boy wouldn't do for his best friend is embarrassingly small. At least on a subconscious level, Gon knows this, and perhaps he knows too that Killua would never ask Gon to do these things, as willing as he might be. But what he does know, looking down at Killua's calloused and bruised palm, is that he will be immediately forgiven.